Welcome to National Pension Partners, where retirement planning meets peace of mind. Today, we're diving into the 412(e)(3 plan, also known as a fully insured pension plan. This isn't just any retirement plan. It's the gold standard for stability and guaranteed benefits. How does it work? Simple. It's funded exclusively by life insurance and annuity contracts. This means no market risks, no actuarial assumptions, just ironclad guarantees. Think of it like this. You're a small business owner who hates surprises. The 412(e)(3 plan gives you predictable, stable contributions every year. Your future benefits are backed by insurance contracts, so you know exactly what you're getting. No guesswork, no headaches. But there's more. These plans are designed to maximize your contributions and offer significant tax advantages. And with National Pension Partners, you're not just getting a plan, you're getting a team of experts, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, all dedicated to making your retirement as secure as possible. We provide personalized consulting, ensuring that your plan is tailored to your specific needs. Best part? Initial consultations and proposals are absolutely free. $0, zero commitment. So if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. With the 412(e)(3 plan, your future is in safe hands. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. Perfect for small business owners who like their finances as predictable as Monday mornings. Stable contributions, ironclad guarantees, and serious tax advantages. It's the trifecta of financial security. And with National Pension Partners, you get a team of brainiacs, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, ensuring your retirement is as secure as Fort Knox. Oh, did we mention the free consultations? That's right. You get a personalized expert proposal with $0 down. So, if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. Because when it comes to your future, boring is the new exciting. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. For more details, check out National Pension Partners at nationalpensions.com. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling.
As usual, a lot is going on in the world. I'll get to some of those news items, and then I'll bring in the esteemed panel to see what they've got to say about a number of these things. So Israel has launched a large-scale West Bank raid as minister calls for a Gaza-style operation. So Jenin, a target of the Israeli raids, is a symbol of the rebellion for Palestinians. So at least 9 Palestinians were killed as Israel mounts a major West Bank operation. And 2 more crew members are under investigation over the sinking of the super yacht, the Bayesian. So the New York lawyer who died in the Bayesian yacht sinking wrote a LinkedIn post months before the tragedy that ended with they all lived happily ever after. So the captain of the super yacht that sank off of Sicily declines to respond to prosecutor questions, according to lawyers. So it definitely looks like there's some serious investigation going on in that space. Ukraine's F-16s have scored their first aerial kills, so that's something that's going on in the news as well. And Ukraine's F-16 jets intercept Russian missiles in an apparent first. So it's definitely looks like that will be going on with those air fights as well. And the hostage rescued by Israel tells of cruel captivity. So rescued hostage Al-Qaeda said, I urge PM to return the rest of captives. I don't wish upon anyone to be where I was. So that's definitely something that's going on as he is been recently discharged from the hospital. And it definitely is some question as to who is ruling Hezbollah, Nasrallah, or Iran. So it does look like he is walking a tightrope with that particular leader and everything. So we'll get some folks' thoughts around that. And Keir Starmer is trying to defend his post-Brexit Europe reset. So Keir Starmer said he doesn't want the UK to end up like Germany. So that's something else going on in the news. And Telegram founder Pavel Durov has been released from police custody in France after his arrest. So definitely that's something that is going on in social media. So folks will be paying attention to that, since a lot of people are aware of Telegram as a social media site. And definitely another news that is coming out of the Middle East is a 10-month-old Palestinian baby suddenly stopped crawling. Polio had struck in Gaza. So Middle East crisis, Gaza is preparing to launch a mass polio vaccination campaign, and the mom of the Gaza boy with polio begs for help as Israel-Hamas wars leaves family in a tent camp. Nothing is clean. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And the Ukrainian drones attack an oil depot in Rostov. So fire rages at an oil depot in Russia's Rostov after the Ukraine drone attack. So definitely a lot of things are going on in terms of these wars and conflicts. And like I said yesterday, the UN Secretary General is warning that the ocean is overflowing. And additionally, the UN chief is issuing a global SOS as new reports warn that Pacific sea level rise outstrips the global average. So you might be saying that sometime in the future we may be seeing some mass floodings and things along those lines. As the far right rises in Eastern Germany, companies are struggling to attract skilled foreign workers. So that's something that we're seeing as well. So foreign workers are indispensable for Eastern Germany, according to one of the studies that are out there as well. And a 4-year-old accidentally shatters a Bronze Age jar at a museum. So the 4-year-old museum visitor accidentally smashed a Bronze Age jar, which has survived intact at least 3,500 years. And who knows how much that jar was worth, and all along those lines. And I'm wondering, maybe I'll ask Nick when he gets here, if the family will be liable for that damage and everything, since I'm sure it was an accident, but that is a significant accident and all along those lines. But Nick is the attorney among us, so I will ask him when he gets here and everything. And Indian police are firing tear gas at hundreds protested over the Kolkata doctor's rape case and all along those lines. So the doctor rape murder case, and definitely looks like those protests are still going on in India. And Japan has issued an emergency warning as a powerful typhoon Sanshan approaches. So nearly 1 million people are evacuated as Typhoon Sanshan lashes on Japan. So definitely that's something else that we're seeing as well. And Biden pushed a Gaza pier over a warning that it would undercut other aid routes, according to a watchdog agency. So definitely a U.S. aid report reveals why Biden's Gaza humanitarian pier fell short. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. Let me get to some of the U.S. items, then I'll bring up Sasha, Rick, and Nick may be joining us, and we'll see who else comes on as well. It looks like Harris and Walz are kicking off a bus tour of Georgia to build momentum in that swing state, and I believe Tim Walz will be here on it tomorrow. I believe that's what Steve had said yesterday. But Harris and Walz are barn somewhere in Georgia, and Vance is to give remarks in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So definitely it does look like Georgia is on Harris's mind. The VP is looking to win over voters in first post-convention stop. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And the Surgeon General is saying that parents are at wit's end and we can do better. He is saying that the parental stress is a significant public health issue, according to the Surgeon General in a new Surgeon General advisory. He said parents can't function, they're so stressed, and all along those lines. So apparently the stress of parents is very much among folks' minds, including that of the Surgeon General, and all along those lines. I wonder if that passes on to uncles and other folks that are caregivers or that have a say in their kids' lives. I don't have any kids of my own, and all along those lines. But we'll see if they say that it extends to other caregivers. But it looks like the Trump team has clashed with officials at the Arlington National Cemetery. So the Trump campaign staff had an altercation with an official at Arlington National staff. Apparently that was over a photo op or something along those lines. So definitely we'll be seeing how this goes on. And it looks like Harris' campaign, coming back to the campaign, is fighting for unmuted debate mics. And Trump claims he's agreed to debate Harris, but there's a catch. So definitely some people are wondering whether there will be muted mics during the September 10th presidential debate. And definitely it seems like Harris wants to unmute Trump, because we do know that sometimes Trump will say some interesting things and all along those lines. And Pelosi on January 6th said Trump has to pay a price in new footage. So this is new footage from the January 6th attack of a few years back. So definitely that's something that I'm sure people will be paying attention to, and they might even be using it as a campaign ploy. And Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton raids Latino Democrats' homes, including those of LULAC members, and the LULAC is asking the DOJ to investigate Texas AG Ken Paxton's raid on Latinos' homes. And I understand that also in Texas, they have purged about 1 million votes or something like that. And it looks like RFK Jr. won't be able to remove himself from ballots in Michigan and Wisconsin, so this ought to be interesting as well. And man is first to be charged in New York with wearing a mask in public. So suburban New York police make first arrest under the new law banning face masks. So an illegal immigrant was arrested by New York police while they were enforcing their new mask ban. And the new Trump indictment filed in January 6th case, and this Trump new indictment apparently could have an impact on the race with Vice President Kamala Harris. So Trump plans to keep challenging January 6 charges even after the new indictments, and it looks like Jack Smith isn't backing down. And Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will go on CNN for their first campaign interview. So definitely some people are even mocking her, because there are some folks that are saying that VP Harris has been mocked for being too scared to do the interview without Walz. She simply cannot be left unattended, is what some of the folks are saying, and all along those lines. And definitely looks like a clinician treating trans minors weighed by death threats and legal risk and backlogs. So definitely this is something in the news as well. And the death of 2 Delta workers is under federal investigation after a wheel mishap at a Georgia airport. So like I said, lots of things are going on in the world. I'm ready to bring in my folks, see what they've got to say about a number of these things. And all along those lines, I've got Rick Rosner with me, I've got Toby with me, and I've got other folks, including Lee Rhodes and Nick Palveda in the background and everything. Hey, Nick, I'm glad you came on, because I did have a quick question for you, and all along those lines. Well, 2 questions, because there were 2 legal questions that I'd love to hear your thoughts about. One, will that boy that broke a 3,500-year vase, will he be liable? And for both you and Toby, apparently the Surgeon General is saying that parents are stressed, and that this is a Surgeon General advisory worthy notice and everything. So are parents stressed, and does the Surgeon General need to be involved in this?
Okay, well, that's a compound question, so object to that. But what I'll do is I will answer the first question, the 3,500-year-old jar that breaks because a kid ran into it. Well, yeah, there's liability, but the real question is it precarious to the parents, and who's going to pay for the damage? But this is an interesting thing about museums in general, and I know Rick, who travels also, has gone to a lot of museums. The stuff is wide open for people to deface or destroy or whatever. And when I was in the Louvre, now this goes back 40 years ago, they actually had the Mona Lisa at least behind some pane of glass. Now it's double pane because people have broken in and tried to.
It looks like crap. You can't see it because
you can't see it. Right. It's changed. The Mona Lisa has changed, but there's huge amounts of artwork around the world that you can literally go up and touch, scratch, and the curators, no matter they couldn't possibly move fast enough.
Right. No, I've accidentally gotten too close to paintings and they'll yell at you. But if you had malign intent and a hammer or a knife, you could do your work before they can get to you.
You could destroy, and it's happened before at the Pieta, in the Michelangelo's Pieta, which is in the it's in the Sistine Chapel area. Okay, somebody came in and broke it, so now they moved
hammer
it took a hammer. So the sad part is that very famous artwork is easily, unfortunately, destroyed. However, in this particular case, it'll probably be the insurance company. They'll pick up the claim, and then the restoration is pretty good. So they'll probably
But I know people in restoration, and the good thing is that in modern times, people that there are thousands of pictures of the Mona Lisa and the Pieta.
Yes.
So when they want to restore it, it might take a year or two for some expert to do a perfect restoration. But there's enough information. If some idiot,
they're going to be able to restore it. But it's interesting that our history is.
But that's part of the reason, because I know this for a fact, because I work at a cultural arts institution, that the institutions have insurance. Even the Hayti Heritage Center has insurance, and all along those lines. Because you are right, oftentimes have to yell at kids not to touch the artwork, even though there are signs that plainly tell them not to touch the artwork and everything. But that is a thing that is very common, and there is some artwork, maybe not of that worth, but it has been some significant pieces.
I like art that's been screwed up. I collect mosaics, and mosaics fall apart a lot, and I can buy them for cheap when they're messed up, and then I'll just sit there all night, like putting all the pieces back together. It's relaxing, and at the end, I've got a nice piece that didn't cost much, because it was one mosaic was filled with rat poop. It was in a farmhouse, and it was gross until I cleaned out the poop and put the pieces back.
Well, before we get to the more serious issues, I do want to hear from Jacoby that other question I asked you, and maybe you want to. Even Rick wants to jump in as well. But what the Surgeon General apparently said it earlier today, is that parents can't function; they're so stressed. So he's released a public health issue form, because he's saying that this is a new advisory that you parents, and like I said, I'm not a parent, I'm an uncle, are stressed, and that y'all need a Surgeon General advisory. So Jacoby, you've got kids, you've got two kids and everything. Are you overly stressed by what you're having to deal with these kids, and is the Surgeon General advisory something that's needed?
I mean, I guess Nick actually pointed out that it being a compound question. I agree that it's a stressful thing, because these kids, when they go to these museums and stuff like that, and the accidents happen, they're going to be stressed that they're going to have to pay for everything. And that's just a small piece of what parents have to deal with, is everything that they're having to watch out for their kids and their lives. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stress on parents.
We know parents are stressed because fewer people are becoming parents. The child birth, we're way below replacement rates. Like, we talk about this a lot, that every woman on average needs to have 2 kids to replace the population. We're down to 1.62 kids.
Yeah, but Americans are stressed in general. I mean, the whole United States of America has got to be one of the most stressful countries in the world to live, because and the bigger the cities you get into, like New York City, they're stressed all the time. Every time I go up there, I go, why are these people so, because they're in survival mode. It's so expensive to live in New York City that they work their tails off. And there's studies that U.S. people, they work harder than any other group in the world, because they're just
fewer weeks of vacation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have horrible vacations. In Europe, the average vacation is a month. And so that's one reason I decided to start taking a month off. I used to not do that, but I'm going like, dude, I want to get up to where at least European standards are. But in the United States, they don't take a month off. You take like 2 days. You're lucky to get 2 weeks. But it's absolutely
even after childbirth, you don't even get that long. After you have a child, you got to get back to work about 2 weeks afterwards.
That's exactly correct. See, in Spain, they have what they call siesta time, baby.
I lived in New York City, and that New York City is fun stress. You're always like hustling to the next thing. You can, it's exciting. You can get a beautiful, like 5-bedroom house in the Oklahoma Panhandle for $120,000. But then you're in the Panhandle.
Oh yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're right.
Yeah, no stress, but also no fun.
Yeah, New York City.
Doesn't this come down to your favorite complaint about government, which is that the government is doing too much probably that it doesn't need to do, because whether it is this advisory or some of the other advisories, does the Surgeon General need to issue these advisories here in the U.S. on a regular basis? Because apparently they did some studies, and I know how much you love studies, and they said, hey, wait a minute, parents are stressed. Let's put an advisory out.
Yeah, they have to, because people are stupid. I mean, the thing is, if the government isn't telling people what to do, people are stupid and they'll do stupid things. So they do have to put advisories out. It's just like when they had the mask mandate, the vaccine mandate. The reason they do it is people are stupid. And the thing is, if they're not told to take it, and then not only that, they then start suffering from oppositional defiance disorder. They go, well, the government told me to do it, so I'm not going to do it. Even though it's good for them.
All right, I can segue to stress in Russia. The Kremlin yesterday put out a video of two sexy models in mini dresses walking into a bomb shelter in Sochi that make it look like running from Ukrainian attacks is the new sexy thing to do.
Well, that'll lower stress. I mean, but the thing is, the U.S. doesn't. When I looked at the studies, and they had Spain number 1 in healthcare in the world, and the United States wasn't even on the top 50. That told me a lot about our healthcare system. How could you have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet by various different metrics, the worst healthcare system in the world? It's the United States of America. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing.
Well, the way
and we don't look at metrics enough.
Well,
everybody, doctors, hospitals charge out the butt. And
no question.
Somebody will pay the high charges, but they say, hey, I had a procedure done. They sent the bill. We didn't have to pay. They stuck a needle in me and they froze a thing in me that shouldn't have been in there.
Yeah.
And the procedure was $30,000. Now that bill is going to go to my insurance company. The insurance company is going to say, heck no, we'll pay you $12,000. And the hospital will say, okay, all right. But the deal is, if you're a private individual, you go to an emergency room, they'll send you the bill for this price that normally gets negotiated way down. And you went to you broke your pinky, you went to the emergency room, $12,000.
Yeah. By the way, this is a true story. I was in New York a couple months ago with my wife. We went to see one of the plays. I think it was Hugh Jackman and the Music Man or something like that. She broke her foot going down the stairs. So we had to go to the NYU Lancome Hospital for the evening. In other words, it was like 4 or 5 hours, right? And they looked, they did x-rays, they came back, well, you have a small fracture. So we're going to give you some medicine, out the door you go. They don't do much for you if it's a small fracture. Then, don't worry, Medicare will pay for it. And they did. So the total cost is $200. But we're also going to send you what the real bill is. The real bill, $7,500 or something like that. I was going, are you kidding me? So if you're an individual and you weren't on Medicare in the United States, they would have whacked somebody for over $7,000 for a 4-hour visit at NYU Medical in Manhattan. How do you like that?
And then if you add in the cost of the ambulance ride, if you had to ride the ambulance,
we didn't do an ambulance ride.
That's a completely separate bill in that whole medical field, which is just wild to me. Like, I think in Durham, well, actually in North Carolina, I think it's like $700 for just going on the ambulance ride.
Yeah, and nobody should ever go hiking, because if you need a helicopter to get you off the side of a mountain, I don't know, you probably end up with an $80,000 bill.
Yeah, and notice both parties, the Republicans and Democrats, are not talking about containing healthcare costs or what to do about it, and also the metrics. This is really bad. Part of the reason I'm going to Spain, the average life expectancy is 84. In the United States, it's 77. I'm going, they live longer, and their healthcare is ranked number 1 in the world. What the heck am I doing spending all my money over here? I'll still be Medicare.
It's right to withdraw healthcare in the United States.
I was just going to say, there were actual policies that both parties actually tried to put forth. One of the things that the Republican Party tried to do, which actually was dealing with tort reform and also crossing over state lines, which actually both of those things would have been really good to do, but they got pushed away. The ACA got watered down. Both got destroyed basically because of the lobbying of the healthcare industry.
The insurance industry, baby. It's the insurance industry, which I'm
Exactly.
So I know we have the
Well,
12
we got somebody down under that has some comments and everything. So
I mean, that's right.
come in.
I was just going to say it's an interesting thing with your healthcare system in that it's a fantastic system for those that can afford it. That's why you'll often hear people in the media on the left and on the right talk about people internationally coming to the United States in order to access your healthcare system. And just for a personal note, although it's not directly health, it's dental, I've got some pretty serious issues with my teeth. I've got an issue with my jaw. I've got an underbite. And I've had all sorts of issues with it. And actually, I'm going to go get it fixed in California. Now, that's actually going to cost me, well into the 6 digits. One, I can afford it. Two, my international health insurance will actually pay for it. But I could imagine that most Americans couldn't access that. So when I go and see that dentist, it's amazing. It's one of the best dentists I've ever seen anywhere in the world. But very few people could afford that. It's a very interesting situation in the United States. I know people that have interacted with the actual medical system with doctors. And yeah, you're going to fly to the United States and go and see a doctor, and if it costs you $500,000, yeah, no problems. But for the everyday person, and look, I'm not sure exactly how you guys go about fixing it. I don't think universal healthcare is the solution for you guys. I don't think that's going to work. But we did actually did a show with Jimmy about this, and I actually said I think probably a system that's more like the Switzerland system would work the best for you guys. That basically gives everybody private health insurance. Those that can afford to pay for it, those that can't have a government-funded one, take it away from Medicare. Have a government clearinghouse to make sure that insurance companies are being fair, that they can't arbitrarily deny claims, things like that. I think if you do a combination of things like that, you'll actually get a healthcare system that works better. But I also have to keep going back to the fact the AMA, as I've said, every time we talk about health insurance on these shows, I've brought this up. The AMA spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting medical schools to reduce their numbers. And you've got approximately half the amount of doctors per capita as your peer groups that you guys compare yourselves to, and you also have double the price. Well, there's a reason for that. Also, very, very interesting. I was speaking to a good friend of mine last time I was over in the United States, and I was having a chat with him in California, and I had a chat with him. We were going to the United Nations in New York, and he was showing me this hospital that him and some of his friends were wanting to build. And I love the idea. I can't say anything more about that. I love the idea. And one of the things that he needed to do was he needed to get outside investors. And, him and his friends are very, very wealthy. And I said to him, but, this is only going to cost X amount of dollars. Why don't you guys just fund this yourself? There's probably $100 million, $150 million investment. So why don't you guys fund this yourself? I said, but we can't. So what do you mean you can't? You guys have got the money. Why can't you do it? Because we're doctors, and are not allowed to run your own hospital if you're doctors. And I said, so hang on, let me get this straight. You've got me. I mean, I do have some medical experience, but I'm not a doctor. You've got me, who's basically some finance guy from the other side of the world. I can own the hospital. I can get all my friends who are investment bankers and stockbrokers. We can own the hospital, but you guys who are doctors aren't allowed to. Yeah, we're not allowed to. Those are the rules. I'm like, what the?
They have incredibly stupid rules over here. You're unfortunately you're right, Shaquille. They do. Yeah, Rick. What you're talking about?
The everyday person probably wouldn't know that, but that's the sort of stuff which affects medical care, and it also affects which I find so shocking. It affects things. Sorry to cut everyone else off. It affects things in ways that there's certain things that are experimental. Let them try. There's certain things that may sound like a bad idea. So there's no secret that I smoke quite heavily and I drink. Now, I'm an organ donor. I'm also 40 years old. Let's say that I live to the ripe old age of 80. The chances of anybody being able to use my lungs or my liver, not very high. However, if there is somebody who's 75 years old who needs a liver transplant, and I'm a match, and I'm 80, they're 75, they won't give them my liver. They'll just let the person die. Now, that 75-year-old knows that the liver is more likely to go to a healthy liver is more likely to go to a younger person. So if my liver can help them, and maybe they can get extra 3 years of life out of it, why not give them the option to say, look, this isn't ideal, but you might be able to get another 3 years of life. But under the rules that you've got right now, the rules say you're not even allowed to try, and that doesn't just go for older people who are having organ transplants. If somebody is severely overweight, again, they won't even bother taking their organs in the first place, even if there's nothing wrong with those organs. And so somebody who's unlikely to get an organ transplant is being told, well, you can't have that one because there's a risk factor, but we're not going to give you any, even though we know that you're about to go terminal. It doesn't make sense to me. I think that there's so many rules and regulations that lawyers have put in place instead of listening to doctors.
All the things you're talking about, doctor shortage, weird priorities, AI could help with all of this and is slowly making inroads into making medical care more effective and less expensive. But even more expensive is pet care because it's even harder to get into vet school. There are fewer vet schools. If your dog tears an ACL, $7,000 to repair that. All right, one last point is...
Yeah, but it also doesn't pay as well for the vets, by the way.
That's true, yeah.
Well, yeah, because everybody has to decide, fix the ACL, get a new dog.
Get a new dog, right.
So, but one reason that medical care costs a lot, and I've said this a bunch, is medical care is freaky. What we can do medically now is amazing. A freaking MRI, which can see anything long before it can kill you, but requires like giant spinning magnets and then supercomputers to process the images. I'm sure one MRI does more computation than everybody during all of World War II did to figure out.
But why does that cause American healthcare to be so expensive? Germans are also known for being fantastic, things like knee replacements and all that stuff. Like Germany is fantastic for healthcare. They don't have those costs. And just to add to that point, sorry, Joey, you can go next. Just to add to that point, when you look at all that machinery that you're talking about, all that equipment, where does it all come from? It comes from European companies that manufacture it. Americans are smart enough. Americans have got all these amazing medical schools. Why aren't they coming up with all this equipment? It's all being done out of Europe.
GE, I mean, some of the equipment I've been in is GE, but GE
GE manufactures a lot of it in Europe.
Yeah, but also GE turned into a giant scam. Freaking.
So just to point out, AI is definitely AI and robotics have been helping out the medical industry. AI is taking off now and actually doing a lot, especially in the cancer field. In all fields, but cancer's been where it's been noted most. So AI is going to take off and do a lot more. In terms of the risk factors, that's where AI is going to come in and help out with that. I can understand the risk factors because of the fact that the risk, if you may create more problems based off of just trying. That's what the experimentation comes into play, and you run into those problems. Those transferring of a high-risk liver into an 80-year-old man, that 80-year-old man may now have a whole bunch of other complications that causes him more costs in the long run.
Give the person the choice.
And just to finish off where the medical industry, the reason the medical industry in the U.S. is so expensive is because, and I hate to say it because I know it's going to set off an argument around it, but it's true. It is because of capitalism. That is why the medical industry within the U.S. is so expensive. Hence the reason you go to one hospital and it costs this much. Another hospital in the same area costs a different amount. There's price gouging. There's price, all this other stuff. So yeah, it's a business in the U.S. more so than it is a business in other countries. Therefore, that cost is a little bit higher.
It's a business everywhere.
One more point.
Just it's a business everywhere.
Here's how AI can and does save thousands of American lives a year. If the doctor's walking around with a pad with AI on it, and the AI flashes the thing, hey, buddy, did you remember to wash your hands between patients?
Right.
Reminding doctors to wash their hands saves thousands of lives.
Well, there's that even the medical malpractice where somebody leaves something inside of somebody. Yeah. So there are always complications, and what you're talking about could be a good help.
Just to come back a couple of things. So when you guys in America talk about the costs of surgeries, those costs are similar when you look at other countries. It's just that in other countries they have, Medicare, the NHS in the UK, they have universal healthcare, or they have single payer, or a combination of both. It's not as though the costs in America are dramatically higher, except for when you look at what is the total cost of healthcare per the population. Then you find out that as a percentage of your GDP, it's about double. But I wouldn't blame capitalism for that, because again, you have to look at causal reasons, and the fact that you've got half the amount of doctors per capita and double the costs as a percentage of your GDP, that would seem like there's a causal link, especially when you consider that before the AMA deliberately kept down the rates of doctors graduating from universities and colleges over there. Before they did that, your costs in America were about the same as everybody else's.
No, they weren't. They were actually.
Toby, I've studied this. Toby, I actually studied this when I was doing finance, so I know that they were.
Just to point out, this is why the ACA was put into place, was to curb costs. Costs in the U.S., just as they're fighting prescription drug costs, which are higher in the U.S. than they are across the globe. These things are and have been higher. Hence the reason.
Again, that's because of how other countries do things. So, for example, the reason why drug prices in Australia are cheaper than they are in the United States is because Australia negotiates. So you've got one single buyer. Okay, they negotiate their drug prices. The United States doesn't do that. There's a lot of things that have happened in the United States as a result of the AMA, and I have to say, the AMA has basically acted like a union, which is out of control. Okay, they have tried to repress and depress the amount of graduates, so that the wages and the earnings of doctors that are already licensed go up. But they also restrict the kind of medical care that doctors are allowed to give. So there's no attempt by doctors to do preventative medicine like you've talked about. There's no attempt for them to try to use alternative medicines. They are lobbied by the pharmaceutical companies to write scripts, and if they don't write them, then they can get in trouble and be put in front of an ethics board.
We literally just stated that it was the lobbyists and the insurance companies that fought against the ACA and watered down the ACA. We all agreed on that. We all understand that. That's capitalism. That's not the government coming in and trying to do this. Those are these companies trying to maintain the amount of money that they are still getting based on the capitalist system that is around the actual healthcare system in the U.S. So the reason these costs are high, and government isn't the greatest, but government didn't create this whole huge issue. Because it's every time when we talk about the healthcare system, we've talked about how these insurance companies come in and have watered down the situation. And now you're wanting to say that because we're talking about how high the costs are, now you wanted to say it's the government's problem, when we just agreed that these insurance companies are the ones that
nobody is saying the things that you're saying. You are just so you're so far progressive. You're so far in your bubble. You cannot hear any kind of.
That you're so far progressive.
You just blamed everything on capitalism.
Let's look at the facts, because right now we're
the fact is,
do we get to respond to you at some point, or do you just keep going and going?
Don't go to this "you're so progressive" stuff.
Do we get to respond to you at some point, or are you just going to keep going with it?
I'm going to go ahead. Actually, Rick, if you're online right now, can you go ahead and look up the cost of these surgeries?
No. Stop. I don't need you to Google.
After the ACA
Let me speak. I don't need you to Google.
Facts that we can discuss and talk about how the ACA brought things down.
We don't need you to Google stuff, Toby, okay? You've just attacked capitalism. I then talk about you being progressive, and you spit the dummy, you won't even let me finish. You have a look at healthcare systems like what you've got in the UK. The UK's got the NHS, which is a universal type healthcare system, and it has caused some issues. So, because of what the people wanted, they've now started to introduce supplementary health insurance, which people are now obtaining. It's not as though one system or the other is going to solve all the problems. Sometimes you need to have a mixture. We've got a mixed system in Australia. You've got Medicare for everybody, but you've got private health insurance. What that has meant is that people who have got private health insurance jump the queue in front of the people that don't. So there's no system that's perfect, but what What you appear to want to do is to blame everything in the healthcare system on capitalism. Every issue in America on capitalism. It doesn't work like that. The whole world doesn't work like that. Just because you think it does, it doesn't.
What you're actually doing is wanting to ignore the fact that in this situation, I'm not blaming everything on capitalism. Capitalism, we live in a quasi-society where capitalism and socialism are there based on our economics and based on the things that we deal with. So in this situation, because of the insurance companies watering down the actual ACA as it was going through, and because the insurance companies were looking at the bottom line before the ACA and could deny people for even having a hangnail to cover their insurance costs, it was that bottom line. That deals with capitalism. That's not saying, well, capitalism is the worst in the world. That's just pointing out a fact. And so these things were part of the problem that we dealt with our insurance and our healthcare system. These are just facts. This is what was documented. I'm not making this up and trying to create all these things blaming capitalism. All I'm just pointing out is that these things happen. The cost for our healthcare and what was putting a ton of people broke in our society based off these healthcare costs is what was dry. What is that capitalism, that bottom dollar? They didn't want to go into the red, and no company does. And every company in the world, yes, but saying that it was saying that it's a business in the U.S. is not saying that it's a business in the other countries. It's just pointing out that the businesses in the U.S. focused on the bottom dollar, treated it like a business, like an IBM and NVIDIA and so on and so forth. That's not the way the healthcare system should have been. Yes, what other countries have is what we should have, which is a mixed bag, but we don't have that. We just have mainly private insurance companies that cover the cost. So if I leave out of North Carolina and get injured in South Carolina, if I don't have any type of out-of-state insurance, I'm screwed because I have to pay that cost there. In other countries, it's different, which is what, again, the cross state lines, which is one of the things that the Republican Party wanted to do for years, but got denied. It's actually a positive thing and should be there. The tort reform, which is all this litigation talk, these things that these individuals have to deal with. That is something the Republican Party wanted to do and is a positive thing. Tort reform is very important, but that didn't get pushed enough in the actual ACA. Again, private insurance, private hospitals, private care is what drives the cost of medical care in the U.S. It's expensive. What we should be is more towards the other countries where there is a single payer. And yes, you can have private insurance on top of that. You have that in Australia. There's other places in Europe. That's what we should be. And that drives down the cost, putting more people in a pool, making the cost of that care cheaper. That's if you want to say like a business, that's like a business. More people in the pool, the cheaper the cost of the actual product it becomes.
Yeah, tell me just really quick. I did see your hand, Rick, and everything, but actually, I had a question based on something you said earlier, and I think Shaquille alluded to it as well. Because sometime back, I met a young lady that was a bartender and everything, or waitress, and she was at a restaurant and she was going into the veterinarian field. Why is there a shortage of veterinarians, if anybody has an idea? Because she was going to the field, she was very much interested in the field. I think she was looking at either North Carolina State or a school out of state and everything, even though she's from this area. But I didn't understand what she was saying about the shortage of vets. So if anybody's got any theories as to why
not enough
not
enough vet schools, but if there were enough vet schools, then you have the problem that vets don't make a great living. So there are like, I think, 4 main vet schools in the country. It's super tough to get in. But if they, set up 25 vet schools, then your average vet might be making like $80,000 a year after, going to school for 10 extra years so it's a tough thing. But let's look at long-term trends in medicine. Medicine used to be super cheap because medicine didn't work. How much did it cost to put leeches on somebody 300 years ago? Now medicine works pretty well, but we're still figuring out the human body, and it's super expensive and it's super politicized in the US. but eventually, with the help of technology, we'll figure out the human body and how to deal with it, and eventually medical costs will drop over the next 50 years. But right now,
but as Jacoby just said, if you've got more people inside, you have to put me here by myself. If you've got more people paying into a system like an insurance system, right, that can work quite well because that does lower the cost for everybody. However, what the missing ingredient, as far as I'm concerned, for the United States, is that you can't just require insurance companies, most of whom are for-profit organizations, to take on people and disregard their history and take on the loss, because what they'll do is they'll jack up everybody's health insurance prices. So what they should instead do is to say, look, let's have some level of reinsurance being done by the government, but you could do it not on an individual basis. You could do it on a bucket basis where you take people in different age groups from different areas and treat them in buckets. This is how other countries do it. Now, there's no exact perfect solution, but whatever you do is going to be better than what you're doing right now, in my personal opinion. But one of the things that you have to work with is you have to make sure that you've got more doctors. There is no reason whatsoever for the United States to have half the doctors per population as everyone else. That just doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, you've also got a shortage of nurses. You've got a shortage. If you're at school right now and you don't want to go into finance and you want to make money, don't even bother going into medicine these days. What you do is you go into some of those auxiliary services, be an X-ray machine operator, be somebody who does the MRIs, all those sorts of things. Okay, lab work, all of that. There's a shortage across the board in medical care, and that shortage is exacerbated in the United States. You've got an aging population like everyone else has got. Where are you going to get all your carers from? For nursing homes and rest homes, whatever you call them over there. Where are you going to get all these people from? You're going to have such a drag on your healthcare system, and nothing's being done about it. Because again, just like your debt, it's something that we'll push down the road for another 10 years and see what happens. It's just, it's a terrible situation.
Hold on a second. Jacoby, coming back to that, I think there's a shortage, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, even in what your wife is involved in, because I think she's involved in neonatal and everything. If I remember correctly, there's a shortage of neonatal folks as well, and that's like the most sensitive field that exists and everything. Am I correct in thinking that there's a shortage in that field?
Yes, there's a shortage across the board in medicine, and that's something that, yes, we have to work on. And yes, Shaq, one of the things with the ACA, which got shot down, is they wanted to create that pool because they talked about, hey, we want to have this public option. We want to have everybody in this giant pool that would afford those tough medical conditions that the insurance companies don't want to cover because of those excess medical costs. But that got shot down. So because we don't have that public option, or that thing that we're both agreeing on and pushing us towards that whole goal of having, that one insurance body that covers basically everybody, which is covered by the main, or those tough cases that those private insurances don't want to cover, and then also have the private insurance on top. That would have been great, but that got shot down, and that got pushed down because of what Rick talks about. I think the issue that I have with the way that you go about describing stuff is that, because you want to talk about the ACA. Okay, fine. Obama tried to do something that was wonderful. I don't question that. I really do believe that Obama tried very, very hard to get something done positively in this field. But you want to talk about that, and then at the same time, you kind of want to blame Republicans. You want to blame capitalism. I never said Obama. I never said Republicans.
Well, who created the ACA?
Reform, which was
Who created the ACA? You're talking about the the Affordable Care Act, correct? Is that what you're talking about?
Now, Nick, are we really going to play this game where you mute me but don't mute Shaq?
I'm muted.
This is the thing.
You muted me heaps of times. Are you talking about the Affordable Care Act? Is that what you're talking about?
I just said the ACA. I didn't talk about who
are you just yes or no? Are you talking about the Affordable Care Act?
I gave you two things. The tort reform.
So I'm sorry. This wasn't a complicated question. When you say the ACA, are you
wanted to do? So it's not a Republican. Can we not do this left, right, Republican, Democrat? Can we just talk about what the issue is?
I was actually speaking, and I've now asked you 5 times. When you say the ACA, are you referring to the Affordable Care Act?
Okay. Yes.
It's a yes or no. It's not a secret.
I said
it's yes. Okay, great. So we were talking about that. Now, as I said, I agree. I agree with what Obama was trying to
I'm not
achieve.
talking about
However,
Obama. I'm talking about the ACA. Let's not use Obama's name.
all right, you know what, mate? You can have the next 10 minutes. Obviously, nobody else can say anything, so
No,
you're the expert on everything.
Hold on
You
a
go
second,
for it.
because hold on a
Like, you can
second.
do it show after
The
show after show.
ACA. Why are we turning it
Show
into
after show after show.
Republican
All you want
Democrat
to do, all you want to
Let's
do
have a
is
true discussion.
you bring that. You can't have a true discussion because whenever somebody tries to talk about anything which isn't the policies, you've been very tricky today.
You said
You
the
didn't
ACA.
specifically say
Let's talk
Obama.
about the
You didn't
ACA. Why are you saying
specifically say
Obama?
the Democrats. But what you've done is you've quoted their positions of how
No,
they
you're
wanted to change
clear
it.
on this.
And then every time I've tried to suggest that there's other things that can be done, you've very sneakily tried like, oh no, well, we can't do this, can't do that, right?
Hold on a second.
You're full of shit. You're such a progressive
Why don't we listen
partisan.
to
Hold
Sasha?
on, both of you. Hold on, both of you. Because if I heard correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, because I hear what you're saying and everything, Shaquille. But I think I heard you, Toby, and I'm not saying this because he's a friend. I consider you a friend as well. But I heard him specifically name two policies that were Republican policies, and he specifically said that they were.
He's doing that. He's doing that because he's trying to be tricky,
Jack,
right?
don't
He's trying to be
say what
tricky
he's
with this
trying
stuff.
to be and all this
Can
other
we-
stuff.
The point with affordable.
Let it
Let Sasha say something. He hasn't said anything, and here he is wanting to say.
Well, you've discussed several options existing in several other countries in Europe and elsewhere. You forgot about Canada, and where I live in Ontario, the money is simply eliminated from healthcare. Even if you want to give money to your doctor, you can't do it because in fact, it could be perceived as a bribe, but the bribe doesn't apply here because for this money you will not get any extra services or any extra care or anything like that. So the money is simply eliminated. You can walk into doctor's office with empty pockets, no cash, no credit cards, nothing at all, and you will receive the care whatever you needed. Get a little bit more complicated when you need specialist services because you will have to wait certain periods of time. However, there is, for example, if it's MRI, there is a downtime. If you are willing to go at 11 at night, you will get it in, say, 3 days. If you are not willing, you want to do it during the daytime, so you will wait for a couple of weeks, maybe even 3 weeks or so, but you will get it eventually. Or you can drive to Buffalo and get it the same day, same time, after paying, say, $1,500 or so. So it's your choice, really. Now, just a couple of years ago, there is a new service is introduced in Ontario where I signed for it with my wife, where for $3,000 a year each, you are provided basically immediate access to specialists, no waiting. Like let's see, even if let's see your appointment at 2 o'clock, you arrive at 2 o'clock, but you will be taken in and maybe at 3 o'clock, at 3:15, because there are people before you. But if you are in that service, you will be taken at 2 o'clock immediately. It doesn't matter how many people are ahead of you or so on. So that has its merits. I'm not sure it's worth $3,000. It would be, I don't know, $1,500 would be better. But you know what? Sometimes when it comes to your health and you're thinking how many years you have to live in this world, so you say, okay, $3,000. Maybe it's not such an exorbitant price. But that's all I wanted to say is that at least I provided an example where money is simply outside of the medical.
But Sasha, you know, Trudeau was he was doing a rally and somebody complained that the waiting lists at hospitals had increased dramatically because he was allowing these terrorists that he'd allowed back into the country to jump the queue. Immigration has caused delays in the Canadian healthcare system. We hear that being complained about in Europe. When you've got private health insurance or that system that you've just talked about that allows you to jump the queue, that's great. But what it means is that the people who can't afford to do that, they might have to wait. And I know here in Australia, the waiting list on some things are like 2 years. And a lot of those patients end up dying before they actually get the thing they're supposed to get. But you've got private health insurance, which is a tax deduction if you earn over a certain amount of money. if you've got the private health, you can be seen, in a few days. So, there are two tiers to the healthcare system, which sort of replicates what's going on in the United States, even though we say, well, we've got universal health. The other big issue with government-funded healthcare, and I love the Canadian system. Remember, my family, one of my family members died in Vancouver. The other one was in intensive care for weeks at the Vancouver General Hospital. It was a very traumatic time. So I know the healthcare system there pretty well, and I'm very grateful and very proud of the Canadian system. But there always are flaws. There's no single thing which is perfect. One of the issues with government-funded healthcare is the government also has the right and the ability to say, we don't want to clear this. We are not going to allow you to do this other thing. And oftentimes that means that even if you want to pay to do some kind of unapproved treatment, you're not allowed to. And oftentimes the reason why they don't allow that treatment is not because it's not effective, but because they say it's too expensive for the amount of people that are going to require it. Now, 40 years ago, the United States had this issue with the FDA, where the FDA would not approve certain statins. They wouldn't approve certain blood pressure and heart medication because it was specialist, and they felt that the amount of people that would benefit from it didn't outweigh the cost. That's not a reason to pass or not pass medication. So there's so much manipulation that goes on. As I was saying before, to just bring this down to it being a political thing, I don't think it is. I think it's a lack of common sense, and it's a lack of doctors being able to actually express what they really think, because if they do, they could lose their licenses in some cases.
I looked up the doctor shortage, and you can read the article on Wikipedia. In 1980, a committee reported to the Department of Health and Human Services that we were making too many doctors, and that by 1990 we would have 70,000 too many doctors. That caused them to do a 25-year moratorium on new medical schools. So this was a decision made more than 40 years ago that has now backfired, where it's
Yeah. Why not let the free market capitalists go, and they'll produce as many doctors as the market will bear, right?
Doctors used to be the richest people in any town. Used to be the doctors when I was a kid, but then insurance costs went crazy. OBGYNs, Toby can probably answer this, because people in birth and gynecology, their insurance premiums are insane because so many things, so much risk involved with it.
Right.
I mean, it's definitely just unreal, the costs around, and to get back with what Rick talked about, and I think this goes back to Mark's original topics, talking about stress of parents, and I think Nick, you even brought it up, talking about the cost around kids. Childcare, the birthing process is super expensive, and that's just dependent upon, again, which hospital you go to. And then the insurance companies could deny claims a lot before the ACA, but now they still can deny some of them. But so even talking about the pool, where if it's a government run and the government can deny these things, well, right now it's a private entity that does the same thing already, so it's no real change. You're still getting death panels, one either from private or from government. So,
because government always does a better job of taking over anything that private companies fail at.
So the thing is that right now a lot of the stress around children is another thing that's driving parent or individuals not to have kids, or not to want to have kids. It's just way too expensive.
Private enterprise always produces better results than government. Why would you want to hand healthcare over to government, knowing, especially yours, knowing how much they screw up everything they touch?
Well, they screw up everything except healthcare.
Right. So wait. One more thing about the high costs of being an OBGYN. When I was a kid, nobody was autistic because the diagnosis didn't exist yet. Now, 1 kid in 60 is diagnosed autistic because we know more about, and if you're a parent, maybe you want to sue because what made your kid autistic? And we just know more. and
Let's see. There's the thing, Rick. We've seen a dramatic increase, and I'm not buying it that it's just because we're better able to diagnose it. There has to be something going on in environmentally, or say it's worth some sort of study, because we've seen it rise across the Western world. We haven't seen it rise across poorer countries. Even when Western medical doctors have gone to those countries and taken samples, they're not seeing it. So what is going on? There's got to be something that we're doing. I don't know whether it's our food or something that we're doing, which is causing.
I was a weird kid. I would have been, had the diagnosis existed, I would have been autistic. But no, I was just a weird, nerdy kid, who, got beat up on the playground, was bad at PE. I'm not sure it's a difference in how kids are. I don't know.
Sasha, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, to wrap up, I would like to remind that at 1 o'clock we will have Modern Investing Show, and today is a report of the quarterly report of NVIDIA is due right after the market closes at 4 o'clock. And all world is watching what's happened with the NVIDIA's report, because all market now is depending on the most important stock of the universe. The name of the stock is NVIDIA. Thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you at 1 o'clock. Bye-bye, everybody.